Hey guys, and welcome to Tech Dad Down Under. And I'm back with another video. Today we are going to look at the Dyson V15 vacuum cleaner. So let's get into it. So the Dyson V15 launched in Australia in May of 2021. It costs 1,399 Australian dollars in Australia, and in the US it costs 699 US dollars. The main features of this vacuum cleaner can be summed up in 4 points really. First, it's the laser head. Now this has really been the talk of the town since this vacuum cleaner launched. And what it is a class 1 laser mounted at the bottom of the fluffy head. And it's supposed to help you see dirt a lot better than LEDs or ambient lighting. The next feature is the anti-tangle comb on the high torque cleaner head. That, I have to say, is a little bit of a gimmick. It has its pros and cons. We'll get into that later on. Third is the hair screw tool. That really works well. It does have some limitations, but I think it works well. It's definitely worth, the attention that it's received. And then last but not least, it's the acoustic dirt sensor they've included in here. And that basically means it's going to adjust its power up and down based on how much dirt there is on your floor. This is a nice feature to have. It's not really groundbreaking, to be honest. I mean, the Tineco Pure 1 S12 has done this for quite a while now. I mean, the technology used may not exactly be the same, but it's certainly not a new concept that Dyson's invented here. But nevertheless, it's still nice to have the guesswork removed out of your vacuuming. You can just set your vacuum cleaner up in auto and let it use its smarts to figure out how much power it needs. Not only does that mean you're going to do a slightly better job at cleaning, but it also means that you're only going to use the battery that you need. Now, what they have done with the V15 as well is that they also use the information from the acoustic sensor and plot it into a nice graph onto your screen. So it sort of, as you're vacuuming, it shows you what type of dust you've collected. It's a nice novelty in the beginning, but at the end of the day, I stopped looking at these graphs because they kind of lose meaning over time. The numbers will climb up into the millions and billions and trillions and so on. And yes, I did find myself not looking at them anymore, but it is a nice touch. It's a nice way to use the screen because there's not much else that you can really use the screen for. Now, what you'll find also is that the battery life is updated real time, and as you move through those modes, the battery life actually updates. So when I move up to the boost mode, it reduces the estimated time remaining for which I can vacuum down to 8 minutes, for example, and it goes up when you move to the lower power modes. Now, other than that, there are a few settings available to you on this vacuum cleaner. If you long press on that single button, it takes you into that menu, which then lets you set up the language, the alerts, and then it also lets you set up whether or not you want to see the particle counter. And you can switch it off if you don't like it, but I like to have it on. It doesn't hurt having it there. And then you can also adjust that sensitivity in the auto mode. And to change it, you can lower it, make it higher. To change it, you just have to long press on the setting that you want. So it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward, and it works really well with that button. So onto the main unit itself. The unit has a single filter assembly which contains both the pre-motor filter and the post-motor HEPA filter, and you just rotate the filter anti-clockwise to get it off. And you can buy a lot of third-party filters if you don't want to use the Dyson one. I'll leave some links down below. It'll really help me if you use those links to purchase your filters if you need any. There's a paper filter inside, that's the HEPA filter, and then it's sort of a cloth filter which you can wash for the pre-motor filter. They say you can wash the HEPA filter as well, and technically yes, you can go ahead and do it. Now, if you don't put the filter back and try to start the vacuum cleaner, it shows you an alert on the screen, and that's the alerts that we set up earlier come in handy over here. I think it's a really smart feature. It prevents you from using the vacuum cleaner if the filter isn't sealed properly. So props to Dyson on that one. Now onto the battery. The V15 does have the removable battery that the later versions of the V11 came with. It's got a single button up in the front and you can click the battery off. And it is a 3600 milliamp hour battery. In my experience, this runs between 40 to 60 minutes on normal modes or auto mode, and about 10 to 12 minutes on boost. It's really easy to empty the bin on this one. You just have to push that red lever forward and the lid pops open and the dust sort of shoots forward. So they call it the point and shoot mechanism. And then you can also take the canister out by pressing the little red button at the bottom, and you can wash that canister underwater. And it goes back on just as easily. You just have to make sure that you get it past the dust shroud that you can see there. It takes a little bit of force in the beginning, gets easier over time, and then the lid just snaps back into place. Now on to accessories. To begin with, you get that anti-tangle multi-surface tool. I'll talk about this a little bit later on. Some pros and cons there. I found overall it performs just as well as the previous tool in my experience. And then there's the hair screw tool that's been talked about quite a lot in the promotions and the videos and so on. I ran some tests specifically to push this tool to its limits, and I really wanted to go back to Dyson and say, hey guys, look, you know what? I managed to actually make it tangle. But unfortunately, it wasn't meant to be. I didn't manage to make this tool get tangled. And then next up, we've got that laser fluffy head, which has got a class 1 laser mounted to the bottom. So it's supposed to be safe for normal use, and the intent is for that tool to really shame you into doing a better job of cleaning. And trust me, it does work in that sense. And then you also have the usual suspects. You have a soft dusting brush, you have a crevice tool, and then that combo tool that they've been providing with a lot of their vacuum cleaners. Nothing to write home about really, but still an essential part of the toolkit. So let's take a closer look at the accessories. So the anti-tangle brush roll on the multi-surface tool is basically the same as the previous iteration. What's new are these little combs that they have at the back, and they're supposed to sort of comb out the hair that gets tangled on those brushes, and then it's also got that adjustment lever, same as the previous iteration really, that helps you open the gates or close the gates to pick up larger debris. And I think that works pretty well as a system. I've seen vacuum cleaners really struggle with this, but I think this works really well. So the brush bar opens with a coin, and you just need to turn that door anti-clockwise, and then you can pull that brush roller out. And this is exactly the same as it was in the previous generation. No changes in that regard really, and it works really well. And then when you flip it over, then you're going to see those teeth that we talked about. It's sort of like a comb down at the bottom, which is supposed to comb the hair out of that brush roll. I think this is a mixed bag in my opinion. Now this has an internal motor that doesn't come off, right? It stays in there. I feel like those teeth actually make it really hard for you to clean that brush roll. So, if Dyson, you're listening, maybe at least make it such that you can remove that motor somehow. I know it's going to be a feat of engineering to accomplish that, but this design really makes it hard to clean out this brush roll. You can't wash this underwater because it's an electronic device. So maybe the other thing would be to actually make this waterproof so that you can just wash it. I think this was hard enough to clean to begin with. I think now those teeth have given it one more thing that stuff can get stuck into, and those teeth can be quite hard to clean in my experience. There was one time when I got some gunk in it, and it took me ages to clean it out. Let's talk about the hair screw tool a little bit. So this was modeled after the Archimedes screw pump, or at least that's what the marketing team says. As a tool, you have access to the brush bar by flipping a little lever down at the bottom, and part of that assembly comes off. So the cover actually comes off, and you have really good access to the screw. Putting this back together can be a little bit tricky, and it has a bit of a learning curve. You have to sort of align that groove with the unit, and then it just clicks back in place. So nothing too hard, but it did take me a few attempts to get it back, when I was making this video. And then the little lever clicks back, and you've got your assembly back together. So on to the laser fluffy itself. I think this one is actually a lot slimmer and lighter than the previous generation, and as a result it fits under furniture quite a lot better. And then you've also got a switch that lets you switch that laser off, for whatever reason. Maybe you've got pets who don't like it, but you have that option to do that if you wanted to. And then you flip it around the side, and there is a notch on one of those gates, and you can sort of turn that clockwise, and the brush roll assembly can be pulled off. And then you've actually got pretty good access to cleaning, that tray underneath there as well, unlike the multi-surface tool. And there is nothing else in there that's, that dust can get stuck into. And the brush roll actually comes off, separates from that plastic bit that we saw earlier. Hair does tend to get stuck in between those two parts, in my opinion. I've seen that happen a few times. So if Dyson, you're listening, yes, that can become a problem over time, especially for people who don't clean it out regularly. And then all of this assembly sort of clicks on and goes back in really easily. I think this